I remember the day so clearly, like it's tattooed in my mind, because it was one of those times where everything in your life just kind of slows down, and you realize that what you're doing right there in that exact moment is something you're never going to forget. I wasn't planning to film a story like this, or even have something worth telling people online, but life has a way of handing you something unexpected, and when it happens you can either ignore it or you can lean into it. And what happened with that little meerkat? I leaned in with everything I had. I didn't even know how attached you could get to such a small creature until it happened to us. So let me tell you how it all went down. It started on a road trip my girlfriend and I took. We had been saving up for months, not for anything fancy, but just to get out of the city for a while, to breathe, to see something new. We were in southern Africa, not the most touristy area, but that was the whole point. We wanted open space, dust on our shoes, stars overhead, the kind of trip where you don't remember the emails you ignored or the calls you didn't return, just the smell of dry grass and the way the air cools when the sun goes down. We had rented this beat-up little 4x4, nothing special, but it got us off the main roads, which is what we wanted. The first couple of days were all about adjusting. We drove long hours, camped under skies so wide they almost hurt your eyes, and cooked cheap meals on a camp stove. It wasn't about luxury. It was about being together, just us, and seeing what the world outside our bubble felt like. We weren't even looking for animals, to be honest. Sure, you hope you'll see something cool when you're out there, but neither of us were trackers or experts or anything. We just wanted to drive and stop when we felt like it, hike a bit, sit and watch. On the third day, I remember we were maybe an hour outside this little town. The road was more dirt than road, just a ribbon of ruts cutting through dry brush and scattered trees. It was hot, so hot you could see the shimmer in the distance where the heat twisted the light. We had the windows down because the AC in that old 4x4 barely worked, and the dust blew in, coating our arms, our hair. I had music playing, something low and easy, and we were both kind of sunk into that silence you get on a long drive, where you're not talking but you're not bored either. That's when we saw it. At first, I thought it was just a lump of something on the side of the track, like a piece of trash someone had dumped, or maybe a clump of grass. But as we got closer, I saw it move. Just a twitch, but enough to catch my eye. I slowed down, and my girlfriend leaned forward, squinting. She said, "Is that an animal?" I pulled over, and we both just stared for a second, because you don't expect to find something alive in a place like that, not just lying there. We got out, and the heat hit us like a wall. The ground was baking, the kind of heat where your shoes feel thin, like the earth is radiating up at you. We walked over slowly, not sure what we were even looking at. And there it was, a meerkat. I'll never forget the way it looked. Small, fragile, dirty, like it had been through something rough. Its eyes blinked slowly, heavy, like it was struggling to keep them open. At first, I wasn't even sure it was alive, but then its chest rose and fell, weak, uneven. And that's when my chest tightened, because you realize you're standing there looking at a living thing that might not make it another hour without help. My girlfriend knelt down first. She has this way with animals. Like, her voice softens automatically. She whispered, "Hey, little one," and reached out her hand, but didn't touch, just held it there, letting the meerkat sense her. It didn't move much, just a tiny tilt of the head, like it knew we were there, but didn't have the strength to react. And I stood there, feeling this mix of panic and responsibility crash over me. Because when you see something like that, you can't just walk away. At least we couldn't. We had water bottles in the car, so I ran back and grabbed one. We didn't have anything special, no dropper or dish, just what we were carrying. I poured a little into the cap and crouched beside her. She held the cap near the meerkat's mouth, and for a second, nothing happened. I thought maybe it was too far gone, but then, slowly, it leaned forward and licked. Just once, then again, Then it started drinking tiny little sips. And I swear, in that moment, I felt something shift inside me. Like this little creature, no bigger than a cat, was putting its trust in us strangers just to make it through another hour. We stayed there for what felt like forever, giving it small amounts of water, talking softly. My girlfriend's hand brushed its back once, and it didn't flinch, which felt like a good sign. We started trying to figure out what to do next. I mean, it's not like you can just put a meerkat in your car and drive off, right? But leaving it there wasn't an option either. We were torn. My girlfriend kept saying, "We can't just abandon it. We can't." And I knew she was right. So finally we decided we were going to take it with us, at least until we figured out where the nearest wildlife center or vet was. I grabbed one of our backpacks, emptied it, and lined it with a shirt to make it soft. We lifted the meerkat gently, and it didn't fight. It just curled up inside, like it understood this was safer than the dirt road. We carried it back to the car, both of us nervous and excited and scared. I set the backpack between us on the seat, and we started driving slowly, careful not to jostle too much. The whole drive, we kept checking. Every few minutes, I'd glance down and see it breathing, shallow but steady. My girlfriend would stroke its fur lightly, and once or twice it made this tiny chittering sound, weak but alive. We tried calling numbers we had for local vets, but service was spotty. When we finally got through, the closest wildlife rescue was hours away. Hours. And the road wasn't easy. We had to decide, push through, or stop in town first and see if someone there could help. We chose the second option. We weren't sure the meerkat could last the trip without at least some initial care. When we rolled into that town, it felt like arriving in a different world after hours of dust and scrub. It was small, quiet, with one main street and a few scattered shops. People stared a little as we pulled up, probably because of the dusty foreign plates on our rental. We parked near what looked like a clinic, though not specifically for animals. My girlfriend went inside to ask, while I stayed with the meerkat. She came back out with a local man, older, kind eyes, who spoke enough English to understand. He looked at the meerkat, nodded slowly, and gestured for us to follow. He led us to the back, where there was a shaded area with a few cages and animals being cared for. Nothing big, just some birds, a dog, a goat. It wasn't a formal rescue center, but more like a local vet who did what he could with what he had. He showed us where to set the backpack down, then gently lifted the meerkat out. He checked it over, gave it some water with a proper dropper, and said something to us that I'll never forget. It was lucky you found it. One more hour, maybe less, and it would be gone. Hearing that sent a chill down my spine. One more hour. That was it. If we hadn't slowed down, if we hadn't stopped, if we had just driven past thinking it was trash or nothing, this little life would have ended alone in the dust. Instead, it was here, drinking, breathing, maybe with a chance. We stayed in town overnight, checking in on it, before leaving. The vet told us it would need care for a while, but he'd keep it safe, get it stronger, and then figure out if it could return to the wild. We wanted to stay longer, but we also knew we weren't the ones to nurse it back completely. We weren't trained, and we had to trust that the people there would do right by it. Still, when we left the next morning, it felt like leaving behind more than just an animal. It felt like leaving behind a piece of our hearts. In the days after, we couldn't stop talking about it. Every quiet moment on the road, one of us would say, "Do you think it's okay?" Or, "I wonder if it's drinking more today." We laughed about how it had looked curled up in my backpack, like the tiniest hitchhiker. We cried a little too, because you can't help but feel the weight of how fragile life is when you've held it literally in your hands. Weeks later, when we were back home, we got an email from the vet's assistant. They had our contact, because we insisted on leaving it. The email said the meerkat had recovered, slowly but surely, and was even showing signs of strength and playfulness again. Eventually, they'd transition it into a protected area with others of its kind. When I read those words, I felt something deep in my chest loosen. Relief, joy, pride, it all mixed together. We had done something. We had made a difference, however small, in the life of this one little creature. And that's the story I'm telling you here, because it's not about us being heroes or anything like that. It's about noticing. It's about not looking away when you see something that needs you. It's about realizing that even in the middle of nowhere, dusty and tired, you can still show up for another life. That meerkat didn't know us. It didn't know us anything. But in that moment, it needed help, and we were there. And I think that's what life is about sometimes, just being there when it counts. So now, whenever I think back on that trip, it's not the landscapes or the campsites or even the adventures that stand out the most. It's that tiny heartbeat we almost lost and didn't. It's the way my girlfriend's hands shook while holding a water cap steady for those first sips. It's the way we sat in silence on that drive, listening to the sound of its breathing in the backpack. It's knowing that somewhere out there, a meerkat is alive because we stopped the car that day, and I carry that with me, always, like proof that the world can be a little softer if we let it. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, never underestimate the power of small choices. Sometimes the smallest ones matter the most. We stopped. We cared. We carried. And because of that, a life kept going. That's worth remembering.